Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
Welcome to episode 81 of the Politics for Patriots podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could leave a quick review on iTunes,
that would be great. Okay?
But subscribing, that is the important part. Please do it, and please remember that every time you subscribe to a conservative podcast, a liberal somewhere sheds a tear.
No, wait, let me say something.
All right, thanks to a grifter congresswoman named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the news: Trump uses Fort Sill to house the influx of unaccompanied minors illegally crossing the border, just like Obama did in 2014, has become: is Trump running concentration camps on the border? That's quite the leap, and on today's show we're going to talk about how facts become fake news. We're going to talk about the journey that they take. And Representative Ocasio-Cortez is going to play a big part in how this BS is created.
I am not the expert.
Ha ha ha, LOL. She's not the expert on anything except helping the news go from breaking to bullshit. Now, very few elite Democrats have the guts to call AOC out on this nonsense because they want to keep the ultra-left happy and placated. And AOC is a big voice on the far, detached from reality left. Right? They know that what she's saying is absolutely
ridiculous bullshit.
But they just don't want to be the ones to say so. They'd rather ignore the conversation. And please, don't tell me it works this way with both parties, because it does not. Yes, both parties have grifters. Yes, both parties have people who are totally full of crap. Both parties have exaggerators. Both parties have liars. But the media tolerates it only from the left. No Republican would get away with the sort of misinformation AOC gets away with, because every reporter for every media outlet would ask every elite Republican, if the situation were reversed, every reporter, every outlet would be saying, do you condemn this statement? And the Republican being asked would be forced to decide whether to condemn the idiotic statement or to look like an insane person. So what do? They condemn the statement every time. Then all the news is Republicans A, B, and C condemn Republican X for crazy statement. And if they don't condemn, then the news is, Republican A refuses to condemn Republican X's crazy statement. They don't ask every Democrat for direct condemnation of every stupid thing that a grifter Democrat says. The media simply does not scrutinize Democrats in that way. They don't believe in scrutinizing Democrats. They tell you this all the time if you just listen. In 2014, when the Obama administration put the influx of children crossing the border illegally into Fort Sill, not one outlet, not one, felt the need to mention that it was a former Japanese internment camp. If you can find any news outlet making mention of that in 2014, please email it to me, but you won't. You can't find it anywhere because that literally did not matter to anyone in 2014. I mean, it was irrelevant. They didn't even squeeze it into the last paragraph of the story, which is where the least important information goes. Now, Before, in 2014, when the exact same thing happened in the exact same place under the Obama administration, that factoid wasn't worthy of squeezing into the last paragraph of the story. Now, it has been upgraded to headline-worthy information. I mean, it's not only in the story now, it's in the headline. And you barely get to put any information in a headline. But suddenly this irrelevant factoid about the history of Fort Sill is headline-worthy. The media does not treat Democrats with skepticism at all. The one exception is Joe Biden. He's being treated that way right now with skepticism. Ooh, is he racist? Is he not racist? CNN accused him of making segregationist remarks. What he actually said is that he's so good at working with people he disagrees with that he was able to work with these senators in the past on things, and those senators were segregationists. So he was saying, I didn't like them, but we worked together on some things because I can work with people I don't like or that I don't agree with. On CNN, that is, quote, segregationist remarks. That is a lie. It is total fake news. Those were not segregationist remarks. This is happening to Biden right now because there's a primary and he's the least far left. Believe me, if he makes it to the general election and he's the nominee, you will not hear any stories about how he might be racist. They won't be calling those segregationist remarks. But anyway, normally the media is totally unskeptical of all Democrats. Every elite Democrat basically gets to be the guy who sells the shoddy monorail to Springfield and then skips town.
I've sold monorails to Brockway, Ogdenville, and North Haverbrook, and by gum, it put them on the map.
He actually destroyed all those towns, but only one person in all of Springfield actually does the work to find out that information. Nobody else is skeptical. All right now I'm going to start with a quick rundown of what I talked about last week, but if you listened to the show last week, please bear with me on this because I'm going to use it to show how we get from the actual news to the insanity, right? How news goes from breaking to bullshit. On last week's show, I demonstrated how fake news distorts a story and then elites take the fake news story and distort it further until something ordinary becomes an end of democracy, apocalypse level event. The example I used was The Hill, Time magazine, some other publications ran a story that Trump was packing immigrant children into a former Japanese internment camp. Spoiler alert, it's just Fort Sill. It's not an internment camp. Obama used Fort Sill in 2014 when there was an influx of unaccompanied minors coming over the border, just like now. Nobody called it a former Japanese internment camp back then. In 2019, when Trump uses Fort Sill, it then becomes a Japanese internment camp. Time headline: Trump administration to hold migrant children at base that served as World War II Japanese internment camp. Very different from what Time magazine had to say in 2014. When the same thing happened in 2014, the Time headline was, Obama urges Congress to approve $4 billion in funds for immigration crisis. See, the story wasn't Obama jamming kids into Japanese internment camps. It wasn't even the less provocative Obama housing children in Fort Sill. The story was this: mild-mannered Clark Obama takes off his glasses, puts on his cape, and tells the Congress to get their act together. So several media outlets seize on the fact that Fort Sill was used as a Japanese internment camp, and they put that completely irrelevant information into the headline of their stories in order to connect Trump to something awful. They want clicks. They want people to click on the story. That's what the provocative headlines are for. The product that they're selling you, what they're promising you if you click, is that you will get to read about how bad President Trump is. Orange Man Bad is the product. If you click, you will get it. Okay, so we start out with those headlines. Then the 24-hour news networks pick up the story. So Ari Melber, on his MSNBC show, The Beat, superimposes the Time headline over a scary, vintagey-looking black and white picture of an actual internment camp. I guess that's certainly what it looks like. And he has George Takei on, who spent time in a Japanese internment camp. And the point of having George Takei on to talk about it is to connect Trump to the Japanese internment camps, to make it look like, oh my gosh, this is the story of what it was like in a Japanese internment camp, and somehow that's what Trump is doing now, because Fort Sill used to be a Japanese internment camp. It was used for that 70 years ago. That's illogical. The logical leap is, oh, this was used as a Japanese internment camp. Ergo, that is what it must be right now. In the town I live in, there's an old train depot downtown that got converted into a gym. If I go there, I'm going to go there to lift weights. I'm not going to go there and wait for a train. It's not coming. If I want advice on how to lift the weights in that gym, I'm going to get a personal trainer. I'm not going to get a railroad conductor to come and tell me how to lift the weights in this gym, even though it used to be a train depot. If the logic is that everything is what it used to be automatically, nobody could even set foot into the country of Germany. Alright, so Cher takes the scary-looking photo of the Time headline that Ari Melber used in his segment with George Takei, and she tweets it out to her millions of followers, along with these words. Said this would happen and people laughed. Never thought the first to be imprisoned would be innocent children with no parents, no power. More marginalized people will be imprisoned. If Dems don't win, democracy is coffin emoji. If Dems do circular firing squad, US is coffin emoji. Welcome to chains emoji. Trumpistan chains emoji. And now that Cher has sent it to her millions of followers, it's just a picture of the headline over a Japanese internment camp now. You can't click on it for the real information anymore because it's just a picture now. If you had watched the actual Ari Melber segment, which I'm sure dozens of people did, you would have at least gotten to hear this.
Time magazine reporting this: the Trump administration detaining immigrant children in an army base that was literally used for Japanese American internment during World War II. 1,400 children will be held at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Government shelters having exceeded capacity. Military bases have been used to house immigrants before, we should note, including in 2014 under the Obama administration.
So if you watched the segment on Ari Melber and you paid close attention for that 2 seconds, you heard that the Obama administration did it too.
Military bases have been used to house immigrants before, we should note, including in 2014 under the Obama administration.
Now that was just 1 second of a segment that was a few minutes long, but the information is there, though it's downplayed as unimportant information. And the fact that Obama put children into a former Japanese internment camp is just neglected. It doesn't seem to matter at all. They don't need it to make sense because they know that their audience will just reject the little piece of information about Obama. But at least it's there. At least it's there in the actual Time story. If you bother to click on the headline, you will get to find out that the Obama administration did the exact same thing in 2014. If you clicked on the Time story, you would read, quote, using military bases in this way is not new. In 2014, the Obama administration placed around 7,700 migrant children in bases in Texas, California, and Oklahoma, including Fort Sill. Once Cher posts it with just the picture, you can't get that information anymore. It disappears. Low information people who get their news from Cher. I wish there were no people like that, but there are. They don't get to know the nuance. They only get to know the headline. And most of the people, when the story was originally posted, they just read the headline or shared the headline. They didn't care about the nuance that was in the actual story. But it's okay, because now that nuance is gone once it hits this stage. Over at the Hill, the headline was, Trump administration to send migrant children to Army base once used as Japanese internment camp. Ooh, very scary. Generally, people get their news from the headline. Like Cher, she obviously got her news just from that Time magazine headline. That's not smart, because headlines are designed to shock you so that you want to click on the story and they get advertising dollars. For the few people who do click, you would have read this in the Hill story. The site was also used as a shelter in 2014 under the Obama administration. But the news stories are only phase one of the cycle of
ridiculous bullshit.
Phase two is all the opinion pieces. So the news stories absurdly connect Trump to Japanese internment camps while acknowledging, for people who actually click on the stories, that Obama did the exact same thing in 2014 and that none of this is new. The opinion pieces will leave out that nuance. All right? Phase three, the social media posts from big influencers like Cher. They leave out the Obama stuff. They leave out the nuance. That part of the story gets completely erased from existence because it is inconvenient to the super fake narrative that is happening here, right? Big influencers, people running for president. Kamala Harris shared the story. Bernie Sanders shared the story. All that takes you to phase four, which is the hyperbole war. Sadly, hyperbole is the shortcut to success for people who create content. All right, partisan hacks love hyperbole. They want to believe that the other person, their political opponent, is the worst thing that they can possibly be. That's why everybody wants to go to Hitler. Because if you're the first one to go to a Hitler comparison, you know what it means? It means, haha, nobody's going to top that, because you can't. If you're a Democratic politician or influencer and you say, Trump is using Fort Sill to house unaccompanied illegal immigrant children just as Obama did in 2014, you're going to generate zero interest. Why? First, because house is not a very scary verb. Imprison, incarcerate, those are much scarier things. Second, Fort Sill is not scary. You read that, you're like, I've never even heard of that place before. Sounds like an army base, though, so what is there to be afraid of? I mean, our soldiers live on an army base. How bad can it be there? All right, third, this doesn't prove my politics are correct because it says Obama did the same thing. How am I supposed to convince people that Trump is a super Hitler if it says in the headline that Obama did the same thing? So those super smart headline writers at the media outlets take care of all those problems. And the real actual story, Trump using Fort Sill to house unaccompanied illegal immigrant children just as Obama did in 2014, becomes what The Hill tweeted out when they first posted this story. Trump using Fort Sill to house unaccompanied illegal immigrant children just as Obama did in 2014 becomes Trump administration to send migrant children to former Japanese internment camp. Trump administration to send migrant children to former Japanese internment camp. And it's still factual, but boy, does it sound like a different story. Like I said, in 2014, when Obama did this same thing, Fort Sill was not a former Japanese internment camp, or at least you wouldn't know it was, because none of these outlets said it. And for the record, Fox News and like the conservative outlets, you know, stuff like the Daily Caller, they didn't come up with that smear on Obama. It's not like back then all the conservative outlets were saying, ooh, Japanese internment camp, and now all the liberal outlets are saying, ooh, Japanese internment camp. That's not what happened. It was in 2014, nobody saying former Japanese internment camp, and now the mainstream media, it's not Vox and Slate, This is Time Magazine and MSNBC and The Hill, all these other outlets saying former Japanese internment camp. So this cycle, this news story actually starts with off-the-wall hyperbole. These outlets spun it from the outset. The spin is former Japanese internment camp. And the reason it's spin is because that information is irrelevant and somehow it has made it into the headline. But remember, that's only the headline. If you click on those stories, you learn, it's just Fort Sill. Oh, Obama did this exact same thing too. But nobody clicks on the story. People share the headline on social media and react to the headline on social media. Your friend who gets fired up about 25 articles every day is not reading the 25 articles, they're reading the 25 headlines. Okay, so phase 1, the BS headlines that lead to the real story if you actually click on them. Phase 2, the opinion pieces. These are about how evil Trump is for putting kids in a Japanese internment camp. Often these will not include inconvenient facts, like Obama did the same thing in 2014, and that it's not actually a Japanese internment camp. Phase 3, the influencers pave the way in turning the fake headlines that lead to the real story into the story itself. Phase 4, the hyperbole war. This is all about describing how awful the story is. At this point, the breadth of your imagination becomes the only limitation. This is where we hear, this is reprehensible, this is dangerous to our democracy, this is un-American, this is against our values as a nation, this is a stain on the American flag, this makes the Statue of Liberty weep, this is the apocalypse. Okay, this is proof that the GOP hates children, proof that the GOP is racist, blah, 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 blah. You've heard all this before on every issue, it seems. This is where we end up. And then eventually, phase 5 is the overreach. This is where somebody takes it to Hitler. It's an overreach of the overreach. And boy, did that happen this time. Swinging back around to what I talked about at the beginning, Alexandria, not the expert Ocasio-Cortez, I guess, thought the whole Japanese internment camp spin was sort of boring, sort of run-of-the-mill. So she decided to kick it up a notch and compare it to concentration camps. Here she is on her Instagram sharing her, air quotes, thoughts, close air quotes, on this story.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border. And that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. And if that doesn't bother you, we can have, okay, whatever. I want to talk to the people that are concerned enough with humanity to say that we should not, that never again means something.
This comparison was so outrageously stupid, such an imbecilic overreach, such a pile of
ridiculous bullshit
that now even several CNN and MSNBC pundits were like, come on. Don't compare this to the Holocaust, where the worst atrocities in human history were carried out. But several pundits that people actually listened to, tried to back her up on this insanity. Now the debate for the last 3 days has been whether or not there are Nazi-style concentration camps on our border. Because stage 6 is report on what the crazy person says. Or were they stages or phases? I can't remember. Phase 6 is report on what the crazy person says. So now the headlines are, AOC says there are concentration camps on the border. Or Pundit X says AOC goes too far using term concentration camps. And the story that was once about using Fort Sill for additional housing has morphed into a national debate over whether or not there are concentration camps on the border. It's like the telephone game you play when you're a kid and the first person whispers, "Zebras have black and white stripes." And by the end, the message has become, Trump is Hitler or whatever. We started with a true story. The true story was Trump using Fort Sill to house unaccompanied illegal immigrant children, just as Obama did in 2014. We wound up with Trump is running concentration camps at the border, according to a congresswoman. It starts out Trump opening up Fort Sill to house these unaccompanied minors coming over the border. It ends up,
my best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
It's a rumor mill, and the rumors are disprovable, but the media doesn't want to disprove them because the media likes the rumors because they don't value truth at all. They value you being interested. An anti-Trump fan fiction is more interesting than the truth. All of this happens because the media values you being interested over truth. They don't want to inform you, they want to titillate you. They do that by artistically tailoring the news to reinforce your politics. It's what happened with the Russia collusion hoax. We had the former head of the CIA accusing Trump of treasonously conspiring with Russia on a daily basis. The media couldn't get enough of it. We know now that none of that stuff was true. Every single bit of it was
ridiculous bullshit.
Mueller did a 2-year investigation with nearly unlimited resources and determined there was an absence of evidence that anyone in the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Mueller said in his report that the case for obstruction of justice, a totally different thing, is made more difficult because of the absence of evidence of an underlying crime that would serve as a motivator for obstructing justice. The Russia collusion hoax was 1,000 news stories that got telephoned into nonsense.
My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
Please do not be tricked by the grifters. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, please subscribe on iTunes. Please leave a review on iTunes. If you do, I would really appreciate it. That's it for today. I'm out of here.
We can have, whatever.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com. And please subscribe.